Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and something came through my news feed last night that I read, and I thought I would just comment on it today. But it's by a well-known author and lecturer, alternative nutrition, David Wolfe. And I'm not saying David Wolfe doesn't get a few things right, but a lot of his stuff is kooky and out there and just not true. And he basically tried to write an article that stated that milk is bad for your bones and that it can cause cancer. And that was his reasons why it's not good for you. So let me put on my +5 cap of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting. And for those of you who don't like my hat, you guys don't seem to understand. My hat makes me a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus. And props to those who get the reference. Alright, so let's talk about this. The biggest problem I have with what David is saying is that he uses the old vegan argument, the same vegan argument that's used against meat in general, and he's trying to apply it to milk, which is weird because David's not a vegan. So I thought that was really interesting that he's using the traditional vegan argument about animal type proteins, which would include dairy and milk and things like that. And basically he's trying to say that milk creates an acidic environment because it's an acidic food. And usually the argument that goes with that is, since it's an acidic food, the only way your body can buffer that out is through the phosphorus in your bones. And so actually, milk would be bad for your bones because it's pulling minerals out of your bone. That's the only reserve of phosphorus your body has to counteract that acidity. And then he goes on to try to say that it causes further acidity in the body anyways. It creates an acidic environment. And he points out that that acidic environment is bad for bones. He points out that that acidic environment is the environment that cancer is created in. All right, guys, that is the acidic environment in the bloodstream causing cancer is a really old hypothesis that has never panned out. I think it goes all the way back to like the 40s or 50s. A doctor had proposed this. And it's one of the biggest arguments still used for a vegan diet because, alkaline foods versus acidic foods. Well, generally your acidic foods are going to be animal-based, meat and dairy. That's your acidic food, and eggs. So it's basically an anti-meat argument, the acidic environment thing. And you know what? As far as the acidic environment in cancer, again, that was never proven. It was never really supported with data. It's just an old hypothesis. And just because something has been hypothesized doesn't make it true. So we needed to touch upon that. And number two, actually buffering in the body. This goes back to just basic biology, and any registered dietitian or biologist is going to roll their eyes at this. This idea that your diet can largely affect the acidity of your body, your bloodstream, enough that you can measure it. It's just not true. Your body buffers these things really well. This is basic biology. It's scary that people can be convinced of this acidity, alkalinity thing in the bloodstream, because the truth is there's no truth to it at all. In fact, your body, in any advanced organism, particularly a human or a mammal, something that's that advanced, we have pretty amazing buffering systems in our body that allow us to very, very easily regulate these things. And this idea that you need to pull phosphorus from your bones and it weakens your bones to deal with acidic foods is just nonsense. It's not based on data. It's not based upon anything other than unsubstantiated hypothesis. Now he goes on to state that again, the pasteurization of it causes a lot of the problems. It removes a lot of the enzymes, a lot of things you need to absorb, calcium and everything else. All right. This is almost promoting raw milk, and anyone who studied this closely, and I don't mean hippie shit, I'm not talking about these hippies on the internet. Anyone who studied it closely realizes raw milk is dangerous. Raw milk kills dozens of people every year. That's why it's not allowed very much and it's heavily regulated. Raw milk is actually dangerous. Louis Pasteur, when he created the pasteurization process, is considered one of the greatest nutrition and scientific minds in history for doing that, because he saved thousands, if not millions, of lives by doing so, because so many children and people who, elderly and other people, like at risk people who are more susceptible to certain problems, were dying every year due to milk. And milk is such a readily usable source of calories, protein, other things, that losing that source in countries that still had a lot of poverty and things, losing that source of nutrients wasn't an option. And by him pasteurizing it, He saved countless lives, and he's well known for that. And when you start drinking raw milk again, you see that people start dying again. Like 1% of people who drink raw milk are going to die from the raw milk. Like 1 to 2%. You're going to die if you drink it. So for every 100 people who consume raw milk, you could expect about one of them to die as a result of drinking that crap. And that's, again, in a good environment. We're not talking about the environment, obviously, the big factory farm dairy. So, again, this idea that the raw milk is better in any way, he says it's only not much better. No, it's way worse, way, way worse. But he goes on to talk about the parts of the world where osteoporosis is the highest, and because the milk, there's so much milk drank in those countries that that's the cause of the osteoporosis. And that is so profoundly ignorant of trying to use correlation to equal causation that it just baffles the mind. All right, there's a couple of reasons why in Europe and North America milk is drank the most, and there's a couple of reasons why osteoporosis is high in those countries. And that's the reason why we put vitamin D in milk in these countries. It's because, number one, historically, which groups of people have drinking the most milk? Caucasian people, people from India. Accordingly, who has the lowest rates of lactose intolerance? People who have traditionally drinking enormous amounts of milk. You don't see that same osteoporosis they're talking about in India, though, or the Middle East, where all of this milk has been drank. And they drink just as much dairy as we do in these countries. And by the way, I don't drink milk. I don't want people to think that I'm making a massive pro-milk rant here, because at least half the people in the world can't safely drink milk because we're lactose intolerant. I'm in that group. I drink a glass of milk. You don't want to be in the same room with me. I don't want to be in the same room with me. 2 glasses of milk and I make myself gag. All right, that's how bad my lactose intolerance is. You don't want to be my friend. You don't want to be in a room with me. You don't want to be in a house with me if I've been drinking milk. There's a lot of people who are that way. It's one reason we call protein powders fart powders, because most people can't tolerate lactose, and those powders are full of lactose. They make you fart, they give you gas, they give you diarrhea. Now, that being said, so I'm not making a pro-milk rant here, but people need to understand these parts of the world have the lowest rates of lactose intolerance because the peoples there and their ancestors have had thousands of years to adapt and to learn to maintain the lactase enzyme in their digestive system beyond childhood. All right, that makes a big difference. And so traditionally, that's because of the traditional diet and the people's higher tolerance of it. That's why so much milk is drank in those regions still, and those people tolerate it well. The osteoporosis increases because we've had genetic shift in the world. So you guys to think about that. Why do Caucasian people in Europe have white skin? And again, North America is still dominantly Caucasian, but that's changed. But it's the same sort of climate. At least the northern half of North America is. All right, why do we have white skin? Why do I have pale skin? Anybody know biologically what caused that to happen? It's a mutation. Because the darker your skin, the more you block out sunlight. If you come from parts of the world where your skin is dark, it's because there's a lot more sun there than in other parts of the world. Very, very simple. You sunburn less easily. You're less likely to die as a result of having darker skin. Darker skin is amazing if you're in a really sunny part of the world. It is life-saving. It is life-saving. It reduces your cancer rates, reduces your sunburn rates. It dramatically increases your chances of survival. It's an amazing survival mechanism. Light skin like I have, and people even lighter than me, is because our ancestors come from a part of the world with less sunlight. You get your vitamin D from sunlight. That's your primary source of it. Well, vitamin D is how you absorb calcium and magnesium. So you go to parts of the world that have less sunlight, darker countries, the northern Europe, northern half of North America, darker countries, less sunlight, particularly the winter months. If people aren't taking vitamin D in through their food, being added enough in, and they have darker skin. They have darker skin than the indigenous people of those regions. Basically, you don't look like I do. You're going to have a much, much higher rate of vitamin D deficiency. People following here? If you have a higher rate of vitamin D deficiency because you're in a part of the world where your ancestors were not traditionally from, and your skin is darker, you have to supplement vitamin D3 into your diet. You have to, or you're going to develop problems absorbing calcium and magnesium. That will cause higher rates of osteoporosis. He forgot to look at the ethnic component. It's the lack of sunlight for people who have more pigment in their skin, because they need that pigment to protect them from the sunlight. You go down into anywhere near the equator, having dark skin makes you genetically superior. It makes you better. It makes you higher chance of survival. You go into a lower light environment, you need vitamins. You need a vitamin D3 in order to maintain health if you have the more pigment you have in your skin. The world has changed. There are a lot more people with darker skin further up north. So incidentally, if you don't get enough vitamin D3 in all those populations, and let's keep in mind, many of those populations can't safely drink milk. Well, we add vitamin D3 to milk. That's your number one source in our diet that we added in for people who don't take it separately. Well, in the winter months, if you have darker skin and you can't drink milk, so you're not getting the vitamin D3, you're more likely to develop osteoporosis. So again, we've got a case of a guy not looking at the facts. He is simply trying to take correlation to equal causation without actually looking at any of the variables. He's doing no multivariate analysis. He's just saying, these parts of the world have the highest rate of osteoporosis. And since they drink the most milk, that must be the cause, right? Because correlation equals causation. No, it's the lower sunlight. It's the darker winters that are causing the osteoporosis. It's that simple. It is simply a sunlight issue. But, that won't sell books for him now, will it? So, I just saw this and felt that David Wolfe needed to be called out on this nonsense, because it just blew my mind that he would write this and try to sound so scientific and yet be so ignorant of the actual scientific facts at the same time, that I just felt this needed to be addressed, and it needed to be looked at a little more closely with what he's saying, because a lot of people are going to read his article, they're going to read what he says, they're going to take it to heart, and they're going to run around and repeat it when they actually don't understand the factors involved. And like I said, milk, at least half the world's population shouldn't be drinking milk. But if you're not drinking it, it should be for the right reasons. It should be because you can't drink it safely. You're lactose intolerant. That's the number one reason. Making up this other nonsense to market diets and books and lectures is intellectual dishonesty at best. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.